Hey everyone, so today we're going to talk about what the general nutritional guidelines are. And before we start, I just want to remind you to go ahead and click on the subscribe button or the notification bell if you want to know when there's new videos talking about health and wellness and life coaching, relationships, etc. Okay, so I'm not sure if you know this, but there are general nutrition guidelines that are published in the United States and actually in every country. In the United States, they are published by the USDA, which is the United States Department of Agriculture. If I'm not sure what generation you're from, but some of us still remember the old food pyramid. Well, now there's something that's been created in that place, and it's called My Plate. And actually, most countries have their own version of these general food nutrition guidelines that they give to people to have access to. And the principle is really nice because basically knowing how to eat well should be the right of everyone, and the information should be made available to everyone. The guidelines in these different food recommendations are used in all kinds of government and nonprofit programs, and they're actually the guidelines that all nutritionists, well, not all nutritionists, but dietitians and nutritionists learn as the basic, government guidelines towards nutrition. Doctors would learn these guidelines, etc. So what are they? What is My Plate? So I printed out a picture for you. You can access this very simply online. But what's nice about the new way that they present it is they present it on a plate to make it really easy for you to know what you should eat. And basically they say this should be your basic plate of food for every meal. As you can see, you've got a quarter of the plate for your protein, another kind of quarter for your grains, another quarter for your vegetables, and a little bit smaller quarter. It's a quarter, but for some reason it looks smaller, for a fruit. And then on top of this plate that you also get a serving of dairy. Now let me just give you some more explanation about the general recommendations of this USDA My Plate. The dairy that they recommend would be non-fat or low-fat. And this My Plate does change. They do change it up. If you are diabetic, they would recommend half of the grain portion. So this is kind of the general guidelines, and this would be your direction for every meal. So if you're eating 3 meals a day, this is how they recommend that you put together your meals for the day. And if you look at it well, you can see there's an emphasis kind of on balance. Everything's included and everything's recommended. They want you to eat everything. And I kind of did a search around different countries to see if there was a significant difference in the national guidelines for nutrition. And it was interesting because this is pretty much the guidelines that pretty much most countries of differing cultures recommend. Some countries like Japan depict it different, like they might do it in a different, not on a plate, but on a different kind of, some do emojis, some do all kinds of things. Anyways, the Japanese one has a little bit more of an emphasis on the grains and rice, which is on the bottom. The Swedish one just gives a couple of general guidelines, which was interesting. But in general, all of the different countries recommend having this balance between nutrients. Now, we do need to recommend that this is put out by the USDA, agricultural unit, that they do try and make this evidence-based, meaning that they are looking at the science. But a lot of people and a lot of organizations advocate for keeping their own products in. So there is a lot of criticism of the USDA My Plate for different reasons. But my point bringing this to you here today is I want you to have the information so that you can make wise decisions about what works for you in terms of your lifestyle and how you enjoy eating and your health. So that's really what you need to judge it by, because when it comes to looking at science or looking at recommendations, you are going to find a gamut of recommendations about how to eat, and they go all, on all the spectrums, from don't eat meat to eat meat, don't eat grains to eat grains, don't eat dairy to eat dairy. So it's really going to be confusing, and that's why I want to give you just another roadmap onto what is one recommendation out there that you could follow and see if this is helping you reach your health and nutrition goals. So what are some of the other recommendations in this kind of my plate scenario? They recommend that you begin to eat less. So they would recommend smaller portions and smaller plates. So if you were to go to a movie theater, get the smallest size popcorn, the smallest size drink. Also your plate sizes. We have very large plates in America, main plates. But if you look at, for instance, some Asian cultures, you will notice that, for instance, the rice bowl is much smaller. Their plates can be much smaller, and this incentivizes you to eat smaller portions. So that's another thing that they want to incentivize you to do. Another thing they want to encourage you to do is they tell you that the first step is to figure out what your daily calorie goals are in order to give you a better sense of how much you should be eating in a day. And they have a calorie calculator on the MyPlate website, so you can go ahead and find that if you want to figure out what their recommendation is for calories. The global general recommendation is usually at this overarching 2,000 calories, but most people who are trying to lose weight tend to drop it down to 1,800, 1,600. This depends on gender. This depends on multiple factors, but just so you have a general guideline to what the big overall arching guideline is usually 2,000 calories or less. They recommend that you eat more vegetables, fruits, whole grains. If you notice here, look at that, half of the plate is vegetables and fruits. So that's, they're really trying to encourage you to eat more vegetable and fruits. Another thing is the grain section. They do advocate for trying to get at least 50% of your grains in a day to be whole grains. Again, that is their recommendation. There are other people that would say to you, hey, you really should only be eating whole grains. So, but this is their recommendation in this particular setup. Another recommendation they have is to reduce added sugars, added salts, and solid fats. So the way you would do this is looking at nutrition labels and comparing, if you're going to purchase, let's say, tomato sauce, to compare the fats, the sugars, and the sodium on the three. Let's say you're debating between 3 different tomato sauces and choosing the one that has the least amount of added sugars, the least amount of solid fats, and the least amount of sodium. Another thing that they really want you to do is really watch and compare for sodium levels. Many processed foods, many foods that are packaged and that are not in their natural form, just like manufacturers have a tendency to add sugar for taste, have a tendency to add sugar, MSG, and different products that can unnaturally add large amounts of salt to your food. And we really don't want to be having these artificially large amounts of salt, fats, or sugars added to our diet. The added fat will add a lot of calories. The added sugars can affect your sugar levels, and the sodium is obviously bad for you as well in terms of water retention, blood pressure levels, etc. Another thing we didn't talk about here is about your drink. They advocate for switching to water. If you're going to eat juice, to have pure juice, but to really try and only have more fruits in their purest form. And again, drinks with no added sugars, and to go for water. If you haven't discovered it yet, sometimes sparkling water can be a nice addition to these foods. And finally, we mentioned it earlier, but the dairy, they're recommending low-fat 1% or non-fat dairy products. As you can see, about 3 servings a day. So yeah, if you are interested in finding out a little bit more about this diet, go ahead and visit online MyPlate and the USDA site, and you can get more details about their recommendations for anything that I haven't mentioned. Now, it goes without saying that this model does have people that criticize it for a variety of reasons. Some people don't like the fact that it's not very specific on how much oil you should be having on a day, which can be confusing. In terms of the saturated fat, they say less than 10%, but they don't necessarily tell you exactly how to do that, since there is meat being advocated on this plate, assuming that they're advocating for lower fat meats. Of course, advocates of a lower carb lifestyle would say that this has way too many carbs on it, because they're advocating for grains and fruit in every meal. People who believe that we need to be having less animal products would say that this has too much animal protein in it, or just too much animal and saturated fat in it in general. People that think that humans shouldn't be consuming dairy would say there's too much dairy. And then, other people might say there's too much fruit on this menu. So just sharing all that with you to know that, this might not work for you. You might try it and hate it, depending on what your belief system is, depending on how your body reacts to it, and just depending on your own food intolerances. So I really want to encourage you to try different things until you find the right diet that works for you. But now you're empowered with the knowledge to know what the general nutrition guidelines are that even your own family doctor might be following, or the dietitian in your healthcare plan. Okay, if you like this video, or you have other subjects about nutrition that you want me to cover, go ahead and put it in the comments section below. Share this video with anyone that you feel could use it. And don't forget to click subscribe or the notification bell if you want to see more videos like this. Wishing you a blessed and nutritionally healthy day.